The dose makes the poison, right? This is prednisone, and it is one of the most toxic medications there is. But is it possible that it's a higher dose is more toxic than a lower dose? Find out today in this video about the side effects of lower doses of prednisone, specifically below 10 milligrams. So in the past, I have done a series of videos about prednisone side effects. You can see that we are going to talk about several things. First, I'll show you my personal side effect experience, and then we'll see which side effects happen at this lower dose, and finally, where you can find more answers. At the bottom, you will see the references, the 5 places where I got the data. Those include the top prescription drug references available for pharmacists today. This is me. I took prednisone for 9 months, and these are the side effects I experienced. I took high doses and I took lower doses, and I went on a roller coaster of miserable side effect doses. Because of that, I had my own personal experience of what I thought was a high dose side effect and what was a low dose side effect. Some of them that got worse on high dose include insomnia and my moon face, and some of them got better at lower doses. Now let's see which ones got better. So lower doses. Like I mentioned, there were 5 sources of this data. Those prescription drug references, I thought, would all include the exact same list. They would all say this side effect on all of them. For example, they'd all say weight gain, or they'd all say insomnia. But that wasn't true. They didn't have a consistent list. So when I say it's from 5 sources, that doesn't necessarily mean that every single person is going to have this side effect. Instead, it just means that for whatever reason, every single list includes this side effect. So moon face is the one that they often had. All of them had it, 5 different sources. And they had different ways of describing it. For instance, some of them called it hypercorticism, or they could have called it Cushing's syndrome, or Cushing's disease, or a Cushingoid state and appearance. Another side effect that was listed on all 5 sources included side effects that have to do with your eyes. So there are the 2 main ones that we need to be worried about, and those include cataracts, which is a permanent side effect, and it's a special kind of cataract. It's not an age-related old person kind of cataract. It's a steroid, like prednisone, steroid-induced cataract called a posterior subcapsular side effect cataract. And then there's glaucoma, and that's when there's high pressure in your eyeball. And both of these can make it so you lose your vision. Glaucoma is reversible though. If you stop taking prednisone, the glaucoma can go away. Now the heart. The heart is a really important one. Even at low doses, according to one study, they called it medium doses of 7.5 or more, it can cause heart failure. Prednisone has an amazing way of affecting the heart, and so it can cause, they also call it congestive heart failure or cardiac failure. These are all possible ways of describing essentially the harm that prednisone can do to a heart. Next is one that I think should have been on every single list, but is only now on 4 sources. We've dropped down to 4 sources. This one, I think, everybody should be aware of, and that is mood side effects. I don't think enough people are warned about mood-related changes that to expect when you're taking prednisone. I hear from people more often than any other side effect. I wish someone had told me about this, because if I had known, I might not have taken it. So at the beginning of taking prednisone, you might feel euphoria, like this beautiful, wonderful feeling of extra energy, of being able to clean your house, of being able to do more than you've ever done. Your condition's finally under control. You can actually open a can. You can actually get out of bed. You can actually breathe. Whatever the thing is that you're taking prednisone for, you can actually fight back because prednisone is working. And it's not just that it's working, but it also is elevating your mood. For some people, it does the opposite, and it makes you unnaturally cranky or gives you unnaturally terrible anxiety. So for those people, they wished they'd known that prednisone caused that side effect. And this type of revving you up is common early, and then later that high energy can kind of go down and turn into depression. And so these are the side effects you can expect when you are on lower doses. We are still on 4 sources, and now we're moving on to skin. And what you can see at the very bottom that surprised me is that this is a most common side effect according to one of the references. And I find that surprising because I don't hear that as most common. I almost never hear, actually, anybody talk about their skin when it comes to prednisone. It's definitely a thing. It's just not the thing people mention to me. And I think it might be more common when prednisone is used topically, which means it's actually probably not prednisone. It's probably one of prednisone's sisters, like a steroid cream or a steroid ointment that people would rub on their hands or wherever they're having a rash or an outbreak. That's more likely to have the thin, fragile skin. For example, people with eczema, if they only use hydrocortisone cream that you can buy over the counter. Here's a quick story. My brother, he actually thought that when his fingers erupted with eczema, that he could just use hydrocortisone cream as like an emollient just to keep his hands soft. And eventually it made his hands, his fingers, like the skin went so thin, it was shocking. So don't use steroid cream all the time. You need to use it, and with all steroids, the lowest effective dose. And for creams, that's usually once or twice a day, not 10 times a day like he was doing. But people do legitimately get this from oral prednisone as well, from the pill. I hear from especially older women, it seems like, that I hear mention this. They can get parchment-like skin that just tears, just like cutting it, like ripping a piece of paper. That's how easily their skin can tear. So this definitely does happen, but I don't think it's the most common. I'm just so surprised that that's there. Next type of skin side effect are other things, which I don't consider very common at all, including red dots or little flat, it looks like a just little red flat dot on you. It's not like acne or something. It's under the skin, and it actually indicates there's a tiny bit of bleeding under the skin, as does the bruises, which the fancy word is ecchymoses. Both of those indicate that there's under the skin bleeding. Usually that's of no concern, but it can be if you're like me and you're taking prednisone for something like a bleeding disorder. And then red face or facial erythema. I personally got that. My cheeks, I would get like hot flashes and my cheeks would turn red. Definitely happens, but I don't think this is one of the ones people should be concerned about. It's much more rare than this would have you think based on the number of sources that are always mentioning it. In contrast to this side effect, weight. I think this should have been on all 5 sources, but now we're down to only 3 sources. Only 3 sources mentioned weight gain as a side effect of prednisone, which is just shocking to me, because statistically 70% of people on prednisone are going to gain weight. And even at low doses, weight gain is possible. The one thing about weight gain is the higher the dose, usually the more weight gain, and the lower the dose, less weight gain. But there are exceptions to that for sure. Some people have mentioned that they only gain weight when they're going down in doses. The thing about prednisone and weight gain is it's so unpredictable, and there's no magic pill. So, but it is usually in certain places, the moon face, the big fat belly, which they're calling central adiposity or abdominal obesity. And often there can be a fat deposit on the back of the neck called a buffalo hump. None of this is what you want, but you should be aware that it is possible even at low doses. Now, another heart complication that is listed in 2 sources is essentially all of these fancy words have to do with high cholesterol depositing plaques in your blood, essentially. So high cholesterol, hypercholesterolemia, atherosclerosis, arteriosclerosis, hardening of your arteries, if you will, and premature atherosclerotic disease. These are all possible even at low doses. So you might have to go on a medication to counteract that, like a statin, like a Lipitor type of thing. Another low-dose side effect includes acne, and this is another skin thing. So on that weight gain, it made you look like you might be pregnant, and this side effect makes you look like a teenager. So prednisone turns you into a pregnant teenager. Just kidding. No, it doesn't. It might actually make you feel a lot older, like me. It made me feel like I had hot flashes and like I was an older person instead of a younger person. But acne is to be expected from prednisone. I also don't consider this one to be very common. It happens, but it's not the most common thing to happen. And another lovely deforming side effect is what prednisone can do to your hair. It can cause hirsutism, which is a medical term for male pattern hair growth. For women, it might start growing beards or mustaches, losing hair on like male pattern hair loss as well. Men can lose hair. I personally lost a third of my hair after taking prednisone. Like after I stopped, 2 months later it all fell out. So it was not what I expected, and I had to chop it off, and now I have a new hairdo. All right, now we're down to one source. This one source said that nosebleeds, or the fancy medical term epistaxis, is common at doses over 5 milligrams. So we're focusing on any side effect that was less than 10 milligrams, and so nosebleeds. I personally never experienced a nosebleed when on prednisone, and I have actually never been told from anyone that they've experienced a nosebleed. So this is not common, but it's listed in these random lists of side effects that I personally don't think mean much at all. And that is why I created a list that compiles them all together. You can search it. It's got a little drop-down box that if you go to this website, my website, prednisonepharmacist.com, you can click through to get the ultimate list, and you can search, is this a side effect? And then you can see how many of those references referred to it, and if it's common according to any of them, or if like there's just lots of ways you can search. You can find out the medical term and then the simple term, and that's at prednisonepharmacist.com. And while you're there, you can pick up your ultimate checklist of all the things that you need to know while you're on prednisone. It's got the top 15 side effects and what you can do about them, plus 25 tips of how to cope while on prednisone. There are a lot of things to check, like for example, your eyes. I mentioned it can cause glaucoma or cataracts. That means you need to be getting your eye checked. But how often do you go? I've got it all laid out for you so you don't have to think. You can just look, okay, check, I've got an appointment with my eye doctor. Check, I've got this appointment. Check, my doctor, I know my doctor's following this thing. And then you can make sure that when you're taking prednisone, that you're doing everything you can to fight back, because it causes so much harm and you don't want it to cause any extra harm that you could have prevented. So if you would like to get that, click the link below. And signing off is Dr. Megan, your prednisone pharmacist. I'm here to not just watch you survive prednisone, but help you thrive while on prednisone.